presentation?
Not yet.
No.
Calvaton Nino, are you still with us?
გესმით ჩემი ხმა?
დიახ, დიახ.
ხო, იცით რა შეასახმე, რაღაცა პრობლემა არის, ან უნდა გამოვჩდი, ან უნდა პრეზენტაცია გავაჟზიარო და თუ ჩანს პრეზენტაცია მითხარით.
არ ჩანს, ჯერ სამწუხაროდ.
არ ჩანს. აი ახლა ერთი წუთით ჩანდა წერან ცოტა ხანში და რა ცოტა ხნის წინ ჩანდა და რა გამაკეთო არ ვიცი.
არა, როგორ არის, იცით, დაეწერა რომ გაზიარება დაიწყო და ჯერ არ გამოჩენილა და იქნებ თავიდან.
ჯერ არ გამოჩენილა, ხო? სანამ იმას ვიზა მაშინ
თავიდან ჩადოთ. თუ შეიძლება ერთი თუ არა და დავიწყოთ.
ვაიმე დედა. წერან ჩანდა გადასარევად ყველაფერი და მოიცა ერთი აბა გავიდე თავიდან ერთი წუთით.
არა, გასვლით ნუ გახვალთ თავიდან. აი ახლა გამოჩნდა.
გამოჩნდა?
დიახ.
გამოჩნდა, მიდი დააჭერე ხელი. დააჭერე ხელი. თქვენთან გამოჩნდა ესე იგი, ხო?
დიახ.
ხო, აი გადიდე. ვსო, გამოჩნდა ესე იგი. ჩანს ხო ესე იგი უკვე?
დიახ,
ჩანს. ძალიან კარგი. ხო, მე არ გამოჩნდები, იმიტომ რომ ნუ აქ რაღაცა ან ერთი უნდა იყოს, ან მეორე, რა მაინც ხო იცი ზუმია და
ბატონო, კი, მაგაზე ნუ ინერვიულობ.
სამწუხაროდ ესეთი რაღაცა არის. ოკეი.
თავს კონკრეტულად.
ხო, ნუ წერან ჩანდა ეხლა ნუ ეს კომპიუტერები ზუმმა საერთოდ მოსპო კომპიუტერები ყველაფერი რა. Okay, so the topic of my presentation and my research is classification of some of the biblical metaphors and their Georgian equivalents. The term figure of speech or tropes is commonly used for stylistic devices which make use of a figurative meaning of the language elements. Among other tropes, metaphor is one of the widely used lexical stylistic devices. Metaphor is one of the essential topics in contemporary linguistics. It has always been in the center of attention of researchers. A variety of scholars have expressed their opinions and viewpoints about this very interesting phenomenon in different fields: philosophy, psychology, linguistics, and literary theory. Linguistics always views it as means of filling in the gaps existing in language and enriching the speech. Metaphor is based on the principle of identification. It becomes a stylistic device when two completely different things, phenomena, and concept events are united in the mind according to a certain feature, which one of them does not possess in reality. It happens when the creator of a metaphor finds something in common in two presented things. Metaphors are met in different functional styles, but it is fully realized in Bell's letter style. The aim of the given paper is to discuss the problem of the usage of metaphors in the Bible, to give an outline of this very important and frequently used stylistic device, here in the particular case, biblical metaphors, its peculiarities and classification, and identify those new classes which were revealed after thoroughly studying the material under investigation. It should be emphasized that literary metaphors are mostly impressive. Otherwise, saying the Bell's letter style metaphors raise more emotions and have greater degree of unexpectedness than in any other styles. Unexpectedness causes great emotions in real life. The more unexpected this or that phenomenon is, the greater the caused emotion is, then be negative or positive. The same can be said about any stylistic device, namely in the case of metaphor. Biblical metaphors may not be strong, but they have great symbolic loading, as the whole Bible is based on symbols. The purpose of biblical metaphors is to make us deeply comprehend the veiled secrets of God. Metaphors in the Bible specify abstract ideas. Some people consider that metaphors help us understand the implied hidden idea and create an image in our minds. Thus, we can properly perceive the implication intended by the author. So we classified metaphors under investigation according to their structure and their strength. So we made two classifications of biblical metaphors according to the structure and according to their strengths. So I mean unexpectedness. We also compared English examples to their Georgian equivalents in order to find out how the emotional loading of English metaphors is maintained in their corresponding Georgian phrases. Let's discuss each classification separately. So first, as we have already mentioned, is the classification of biblical metaphors according to their structure. And there are three main classes were revealed with their variations. In the first class, we united the cases when two words making a metaphorical phrase are connected with the verb to be. So the formula of these cases can be A is B. So as lots of scholars say, A is tenor and B is vehicle. A is B, something is B. I should not say that it's a strong metaphor, but anyway, we can consider them as metaphors. So the first is A is B, the simple case, simply A is B. You know, I won't read all examples because you can see them because of limited time. I'm not going to read all the metaphors. The first class, you see that A is B, simple cases, but now, oh Lord, you are our Father, we are the clay, and you are our potter, and all of us are the work of our hand. So A is B, you are our Father, A is B. The second class, it has, as I already mentioned, it has subclasses. So A is B and variations. In the case of for he is our God and we are the people of his pasture and the sheep of his hand. So this formula is A is B is even more complicated as B includes of phrase. B consists of noun plus of plus possessive adjective plus noun. Then we can say that A is, he said, the Lord is my rock and my fortress and my deliverer. So A is B, B and B. So tenor is, then comes vehicle, vehicle, and vehicle. At the same time, B is expressed with two words, possessive adjectives and noun. So Lord A is and my rock. So vehicle is my rock and it consists of possessive adjective and noun. The next is structure. Again, A is B and again variations. A is expressed with two words, possessive adjective and noun, followed by the relative pronoun which. The formula will look as follows: A plus which is B. The next is their end is destruction, their God is a belly, and their glory is the shame whom mind earth the world. So this example includes three cases of A is B. In all three cases, A consists of two words, possessive adjectives and noun. Besides, in the second case, B consists of two words, possessive adjectives and noun. And the third case, in the third case, B consists of three words, preposition, possessive adjective, and noun. The next case is when metaphorical expression is now N plus, so it means noun plus of phrase. And one of the elders says, unto me, weep not. Behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, hath prevailed to open the book and to loose their seven seals thereof. And they give an example. Satan is compared to a chasing lion. On the other hand, a lion is also known for his royalty and is considered to be the king of jungle. So based on this, we can say that here Jesus is compared to a lion to show his strength, grand power, and quality of a king. So the next is a noun plus or phrase and a verb. The Spirit of God has made me, the breath of the Almighty gives me life. The next is adjective plus noun and or phrase. So it was first noun plus or phrase and verb, now adjective plus noun and or phrase, and then comes verb plus noun and plus of phrase. The third classification class is nouns and verbs with different variations. It is noun plus verb. But it is easier for heaven and earth to pass away than for one dot of the law to become void. And we have lots of such examples. Then comes nouns and verbs with different variations. Again, noun plus verb, and a place which syntactically functions as an adverbial modifier of place, so that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith. And we can see lots of such examples. And the last is a noun plus verb and a plus prepositional phrase. That as sin has reigned unto death, even so might grace reign through righteousness into eternal life by Jesus Christ our Lord. Thus, the first type of classification means a structural classification of biblical metaphors revealed three classes, which in its turn are divided into subclasses. The first class, we have six subclasses, and the second class, 4 subclasses, and the third, 3 subclasses. Now the next is classification of biblical metaphors according to their strength. It is more interesting than the first, which is somehow to say more dry. This is more expressive, more interesting. It is noteworthy that this type of classification is more interesting and clearly reveals the real nature of metaphors. The material under investigation enabled us to distinguish 5 classes of metaphors based on their strength, their emotional loading. It means what kind of emotions they evoke in us. It is a well-known fact that emotions are subjective. Consequently, understanding and interpretation of any stylistic device is subjective. Metaphor is not an exception. So we can say that why we mean, I would tell a few words about why it's subjective. For example, if we say, I don't mean biblical metaphors, I mean here why it's subjective. So one subject can pass and say that flowers are crying, and another subject, another person can pass and say flowers are laughing or dancing. So in the reality, flowers are neither dancing nor crying. They are moving, but it depends on the person, how he or she feels, how she perceives this, in what mood he or she is. So that's why they are purely subjective. In this respect, while carrying out the research, we divided the biblical metaphors under investigation into the following classes. So we call it very strong metaphors, not strong enough, trite, and very trite. It is also our perception, our viewpoint, how we perceive these metaphors. So besides, we also compared the English examples to the Georgian equivalents in order to find out how the emotional loading of English metaphors is maintained in their corresponding Georgian phrases. So let's discuss each class separately. So the first is a very strong. So it's as a newborn baby's desire, a silence milk of the word that you may grow thereby. So I won't read Georgian equivalents. You can read it yourselves. And the second is, for you shall go out with joy and be led with forth. Forth with peace. The mountains and the hills shall break forth before you into singing, and all the trees of the field shall clap their hands. So what I like to tell you that we consider that in both cases we deal with very strong metaphors. The sincere milk of the word in the first example, the mountains and the hills shall break forth, and the trees of the field shall clap their hands in the second example. Milk of word certainly does not exist in reality. Proceeding from the Bible itself and its hidden content, we understand that under word is implied God's word, which evokes in the mind the action of nourishment due to the word milk. And the word sincere makes the phrase even stronger. As for the metaphoric expression given in the second example, there arose even greater emotions than the previous one. In reality, neither mountains and hills can break forth into singing, nor trees can clap their hands. There is no true similarity, but there is a kind of identification where two lexical meanings are realized simultaneously. It should be mentioned that while comparing these two verses with the corresponding Georgian versions, we noticed that the Georgian metaphorical phrases arouse the same emotions and can also be considered as a very strong metaphors.
I'm sorry for interruption. We are slightly over the time limit. Could you please?
Yes, I know. I know. I will soon complete it. Still there. Next is strong. How much time do I have?
Actually, for each presentation, we have 15 minutes.
Yes, and how much time do I have left?
We started slightly late because of this technical issue, but now we are already 4 minutes over. So
okay, I will complete it. It becomes strong metaphors, and so you will see yourselves while reading it as strong metaphors, and I will simply explain it. We consider the phrase "the crown of glory" a strong metaphor, as it is quite unexpected collocation, and the whole unfading, and the word unfading makes it even stronger. It is certain that every unexpected and occasional case arouse greater emotions. The same can be said about the Georgian equivalent, and in the same case, so that she's the same you will read it here on the next example. The given example we deal with two metaphoric expressions. Sin has reigned, so you'll see. In reality, neither sin nor glory certainly can reign, but considering the biblical theme, sin dominated in hell and glory in heaven. This is what the main idea of the discussed verse conveys. Both of the phrases are loaded emotionally and are considered to be very strong metaphors. And the next case is different in terms of the Georgian version. You will see that we think that the expression where the people of the God's pasture is a strong metaphor and it evokes great emotions, but in Georgian equivalent, halchi nisisamso is not a metaphor at all. And I will explain you why, because pasture, in according to its definition, it's the feeding of livestock, and so it is directly what is meant by this word. So in Georgian we don't have, so we have deviation. In English we have strong metaphor, and in Georgian we do not have metaphor at all. And then comes the not strong enough. What we mean by not strong enough? It is somewhere between trite and strong metaphors. They have not become trite yet, but they are not strong enough yet. And let's go to trite ones. You will see that you will see that trite metaphors they are so that are used quite often. They do not arise so much emotions, and that's why we call them trite. And in Bible we see many examples of trite metaphors. And then comes not a very trite metaphors. So very trite metaphors mean that once they were matter considered to be metaphors, as not let's deviate from Bible. Time flies, for example, say simple phrase time flies once was a metaphor, but now it is very and very trite because always people use time flies so quickly, we say it, and it's no metaphor at all. In the Bible we met such cases as well. And as for conclusion, we can say that after studying 50 Bible verses, we made two types of classification of metaphors according to the strengths and according to the structure and according to the strengths. Based on the conducted research, three types of structural classes were revealed, and each of them were divided to subclasses. And the second type of classification, as I have already mentioned, there are 5 classes, and not strong, very strong, strong, not strong enough, trite, and very trite metaphors. This classification is based on the degree of unexpectedness and the frequency of usage of metaphors. The more unexpected a metaphor is and the less frequently it is used, the higher its strength indicator is. Thus, the degree of unexpectedness is directly proportional to the strength of a metaphor. It should be mentioned that according to the empirical material investigated by us, most metaphors fall under the classes not strong enough, and the list of them under the classes very strong and very trite. Graphically, it can be presented as follows: not from strong metaphors more than trite. Trite is more than strong. It's more than very strong and very trite are met equally. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you so much for these interesting observations. Dear colleagues, I really feel awkward. I don't wish to interrupt your presentation, so could I please kindly ask you to observe this time limit so that everyone has equal time to present. Thank you so much.
Yes, I understand, yes. I will send my full presentation.
Yes. It does not refer to you only. I'm sorry. We just
I understand. Yes, certainly.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Yes, and I will send the whole presentation, and then it will be accessible, available to everybody while published.
Thank you. Thank you. Our next presenters are Sidika.
So if you have any questions, I don't know.
Kalbaton Nino, unfortunately, we don't have time for this because we are 10 minutes behind the schedule. We need to resume. So dear presenters, if you would like to have time for the questions, we need to stick somehow to 10-12 minutes.
Yes, as you like it. Okay.
And then there will be time left for questions. So our next presenter.
Hello everyone. Firstly, I'm sorry. Because
yes, our next presenters are Sidika Karagöz and Nihan Erdemir with the topic "The Reasons, Views, and Practices of Parents Working as EFL Teachers Relating to Raising Bilingual Children." Thank you for joining us. The floor is yours.
I'm attending from Turkey. Actually, I'm one of the chairs, but because of the time difference, I've started late. I'm sorry for this.
No problem, Sidika. No problems.
And thank you. Now it's my presentation. We conducted this with my supervisor, Assistant Professor Dr. Nihan Erdemir from Süleyman Demirel University. Our study is, as you mentioned, reasons, views, and practices of parents working as EFL teachers in Turkey relating to raising bilingual children. In this presentation, you will find introduction, literature, methods, results, discussion and conclusion, and finally recommendation parts. Raising a bilingual child has drawn considerable interest among non-native English speakers, especially among the parents working as EFL teachers. People around the world seek ways to raise their children bilingually, both in native and non-native contexts. While there are many studies in native contexts, there are only a few studies in non-native contexts in terms of parental views and practices. The aim of our study is determining these reasons, views, and practices. I want to start the literature with the definition of bilingualism, which has very different definitions from different scholars. The early definitions are generally tend to define bilingualism as a balanced bilinguals. Weinreich, for example, briefly defines bilingualism as the alternate use of both languages. And Bloomfield also defined the language bilingualism as a person's ability to speak both languages at a native-like level. And Wei defined bilingualism as the ability to use two languages in everyday life. In previous literature, Romanowski mentioned that some families want their children to communicate in another language, while others want to prepare their children for a formal education in second language. These cases require different levels of input. Thus, families need to arrange their expectations in accordance with their reasons for raising bilingual children. In a comparative study conducted by Akgül, Yazıcı, and Akman, they compared the views of parents living in their own country and those who live in another country, except their hometowns. They found that they used similar practices to provide input for their children. These practices include cartoons, audiovisual media, books, songs, TV, reinforcing school activities at home, conversation in the school language, etc. I want to mention some of the methods that are used by parents for raising bilingual children. One parent, one language is one of these methods, which is called OPOL. In these methods, one parent only speaks one language while other speaks another language. The child is encouraged to respond to the language they are spoken to. In another method, which is called MILA or MLH, the minority language at home is used exclusively spoken and by the family. Context or time. In this method, the family speaks each language at different times depending on the day or situation. For example, families can speak only English while playing some games with the child, or on Sunday, while they are speaking only Turkish, on Monday they can speak English. Depending on the day, they change the language. Mixed language, which is less systematic when compared to other methods, the family switches between languages organically as they see fit. This is our research questions. We investigated the reasons, views, practices, methods, and skills the EFL teacher parents use to raise their children bilingually in Turkey. Our method, the study adopted a qualitative research design. An exploratory case study research method was utilized to determine common themes. The homogeneous sampling among the types of purposive sampling technique was used to select the participants. Our participants included 9 parents working as EFL teachers. One of them was the pilot study. So we used 8 of them to have our findings. Our parents are non-native English speakers and their children, their children's age were between 15 months to 16 years old. Data collection tool and procedure. Semi-structured interview questions were used. The validity of the questions in the form was sustained in 2 ways, by expert opinions and a pilot study. The ethics committee approval was received from the university. Data were collected through online interviews. We used Zoom. Prior to interviews, the participants were informed about the content of the study and interview questions. With the participants' consent, the research recorded and the interviews. Data analysis. In a qualitative research design, content analysis is used to interpret the data by presenting in codes and teams. The transcriptions were coded via a qualitative software program, NVivo 12. The first and the second rater analyzed the data through the constant comparison method. It was 0.83 and indicated a high degree of reliability. Regarding the parents' reasons for raising a bilingual child, 4 themes emerged: academic, career, life, and parental. Parents are highly interested in their children's success at school, life, and career. One important finding is that parents were more devoted to raise children bilingually in order to invest in their academic and life success. Also, parents pay attention to their children's success in life and preferred them to become a world citizen. Another important finding is that parents are interested in raising them bilingually so that children could have a freedom to choose to work and live abroad in the future. Similarly, parents' views towards advantages were rooted in academic and life themes. However, the disadvantages were rather related to the child, society, and family, by mainly including having language delay, being found strange by the society, and being discouraged by the family members. Regarding the methods and skills of parents, the study highlighted that parents were unaware of the approach to bilingualism and utilized their own methods. These methods including focusing on speaking, listening skills, and the enhancement of vocabulary knowledge. They generally used storybook, cartoons, games, but they preferred not allowing mobile apps because they wanted their children not to be exposed to screen for a long time. So storybooks and games offered them a more comprehensible input and interactive pictures, colorful characters. Regarding the practices, parents resorted to ready-made materials at higher levels, such as storybooks, cartoons, games, flashcards, songs, etc. Discussion and conclusion. Parents could have a chance to observe cognitive and communicative aspects, yet they couldn't have a chance to observe the academic advantages of the bilingualism process. English has become a lingua franca that affects the social reasons for families raising bilingual children. They want their children to live abroad, travel around the world, and meet new people without having difficulty. The families focus on their academic development more because they think better school success brings better job opportunities, and this may consequently lead to higher living standards. In terms of advantages of bilingualism, the results show a division, experiences and expectations. A possible explanation for this might be that ages of samples are mostly ranked as 2-3 years old. The families had chance to observe their academic development, cognitive development, but they couldn't have a chance to observe their academic development. Some parents encountered language delay with the child. However, they consider this as a negligible problem since the delay was in acceptable level. Another disadvantage that families encountered is other family members' prejudice against the bilingualism process. Parents resorted to ready-made materials at a higher level, such as storybooks, cartoons, games, flashcards, songs, compared to the materials which rather require parents' productivity, such as puppet, role play, relay, and speaking. Most of the families are unaware of the methods about bilingualism. Some of them adopted one parent, one language or minority language at home, while some adopted only minority language at home. Recommendations to families who want to raise their children as bilinguals. The parents might be suggested to raise awareness about the scientific approaches to bilingualism and their possible implications on bilingual children with the process. Accordingly, the study suggests that training on how to practice language in a number of ways should be made available to parents who raise bilingual children. These are my references for this presentation, and thank you for listening to me. It was a quick presentation, I know, but because we are late. If you have any questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was really interesting. I think we have a little bit of time for one or two questions in this case. If you would like to ask something to the presenters. Thank you. Then I would ask you one question. So what is the context in Turkey when we talk about bilingualism? What are major languages, Turkish and English? Or, for example, I know that you have Kurdish as well there in Turkey. So what's the context and how comparable the structures of these two languages are? Thank you.
These samples are English teachers. Their second language is English. They are non-native speakers of English, and their mother tongue is Turkish. So the bilingualism context in here is Turkish-English bilingualism. Kurdish is generally their mother tongue. Our samples were related to these both languages.
Okay, so Turkish and English mostly,
yeah.
Right? Okay, and what was the major challenge in terms of structure? Because these are, let's say, two different types of languages. One is analytic, another, I mean, Turkish, as far as I'm concerned, it's highly synthetic, like Georgian, for example. What is the biggest challenge in your case while mastering these two languages?
Actually, they want to master these languages because the English is a lingua franca and it's used in every country now. The challenge for structure is generally with the order of the words. For example, it's very different, and Turkish is a language with a very roots and how can I say, and it's very different from English in some ways. But these people are trying to make their children acquire the language instead of learning at school, because it's more easier to learn when acquire before school. So they are trying to do this with their child.
Okay, thank you so much. Yes, through the program you see each other's names. If you want again to get connected to these people, you can use our Padlet platform, and you can further communicate with other participants. Now let's move to the next session. We have Tamta Amiranashvili with the paper criticism of a conformist society in Kazuo Ishiguro's Never Let Me Go. Tamta, the floor is yours. Thank you for participation.
Okay, thank you. Well, right now I'm trying to share the screen, and I'm not sure if I'm doing it well.
We can see it. You've joined using mobile phone, right?
Okay, I'll share the presentation. Okay, so do you see the presentation?
We do. Thank you. Tamta, please be reminded you have 15 minutes.
I'm Tamta Amiranashvili. I'm from Akakitsagateli State University, Kutaisi. And the title of my paper is Criticism of a Conformist Society in Kazuo Ishiguro's Never Let Me Go. Never Let Me Go is a dystopian novel by a Nobel Prize winner author Kazuo Ishiguro, and it has been a great success since its first publication in 2005. The apparent success of Ishiguro's novel generates from its central theme, which has constantly been a major issue of discussion. In 1997, the first clone of a mammal in history appeared. Sheep Dolly was born in Great Britain, which caused a heated discussion about ethically questionable science experiments. What is the aim of cloning and should it be justified? Will scientists be able to clone people, and what will this bring to mankind? Ishiguro's Never Let Me Go also reflects a painful problem of the modern world organ trade. Since genetic engineering and cloning technology presented in the novel gain a benefit from organ farming. The black market, where organs are being sold, is a multi-million-dollar industry. The World Health Organization released official statistics revealing that in 2010, about 11,000 organs were sold on the black market. Even in such a developed country as the USA, where organ trade is forbidden, there can be found surgeons who do not know or simply are not interested to question where the organs come from. However, in Ishiguro's novel, it's absolutely natural to cut out organs from clones for use in curing the diseases in members of the dominant non-clone population. This is a long-standing tradition, as in special schools, centers, and homes, clones are raised, who have been created entirely for the purpose of organ harvesting. Such an abnormal system with its established customs exists because of the approval of the majority of the society. Accordingly, the aim of the presented paper is to study the reasons for conformism and absolute passivity not only in clones, but also in normal people, and thus investigate what motives from clones to take on just reality as it is and sacrifice their lives for people's well-being. Without doubt, such an unjustifiable program accorded within the political system effectively operates as the clones themselves never oppose it. Even though they do not seem to be strictly controlled, since there is not mentioned an identity card or any document that differentiates the clones from the normal people, they do not even show a desire to run away. Although we expect the clones definitely to rebel, it never happens. According to Margaret Atwood, there is nothing unusual about clones' reluctance to fight, as in Ishiguro's world, as in our own, most people do what they are told. Instead of fighting the injustice, surprisingly, the clones are proud of their duty, useful purpose, and they want to be praised. Donating organs does not lead to the clones' rebellion. On the other hand, it has become like a profession for them. Kathy H., a protagonist of Never Let Me Go, is the living example of a clone having become obedient. The ill consequences of the system and its powerful influence to brainstorm clones is typified in Kathy, who remains passively in the grips of her duty as a carer and donor. If conventional main characters in dystopian novels are determined to uncover the absolute truth about the government and fight against injustice, she neither criticizes the system nor allows herself to know the ills of it. Unwilling to show curiosity about her uncertain future and face up the bitter truth, Kathy never complains. What's more, she imagines to be extremely lucky, having been educated in IRCEELT, an institution where the clones are raised, and not in a farmhouse for organ donations. Kathy, as a narrator, retells a story and frequently addresses someone surely. This reference takes place throughout the novel, and no doubt Kathy means someone like her, a clone, a donor, or carer, maybe not from IRCEELT, but from a similar institution. Another question is what effect the story has on the reader, or what Kathy's hidden intention is while retelling the story. Clearly, Kathy's intention is not to awaken the reader and set them against the system. Her story prompts the reader to remain as passive as she is and to share her conformist attitude. However, we can say that Kathy is recounting her story to the world, who does not think she's a normal human being, is also an act of heroism. On the other hand, Margaret Atwood, writing her article on Ishiguro's novel, Kazuo Ishiguro's novel is really chilling, that narrating a story is like a way to escape from reality. Kathy doesn't provide the reader with the descriptions of the clones, what they eat, what they look like. Meanwhile, when it comes to the weather or buildings or landscapes, she's especially observant of these things. As Atwood believes, Kathy deliberately focuses on the things not connected to her or her body in order to avoid thinking about her and her friends' unclear fate. Well, what prompts the clones to live with a heavy burden and behave as if they have nothing particular to worry about, although they know perfectly well that they will never reach their middle age? Kathy's age passivity might be caused by some genetic manipulation. As the clones cannot produce babies, their psychology might be programmed in a way that they cannot find. Well, if we assume that this is right, then Ishiguro does not mention anything about it. Success of the clone project is mainly guaranteed by guardians or teachers, as they are the ones who are responsible for their bringing up. The guardians try their best to make the lives of the clones normal and give their students a happy childhood, as childhood will remain their only happy memory. To face their fate without much difficulty, the guardians teach the clones to be obedient from their early childhood. However, they lie to themselves when they do not admit that they are raising scapegoats. The guardians cannot change the fate of clones, or maybe they do not want to change it. So it's not necessary to tell the students the truth and make their short lives bitter. The guardians use several methods to brainwash the clones. Firstly, the clones are developed a positive attitude towards their purpose. How? Using the euphemistic language, for example, donor and donation instead of harvesting organs, or completion in place of death, and curing as a substitute for sacrificing yourself. Altering the language, the clones were made to believe that they were making positive difference to others. Preoccupied with their successful careers, they did not mind doing inexhaustible jobs with minor compensations. Thus, usage of euphemisms in the novel serves the purpose of diminishing resistance, it guarantees passivity and compliance. Literature also deliberately becomes a means of manipulation in the hands of the guardians. The clones have access only to the novels the guardians think appropriate for them, that is the 19th century fiction. As many of the works of the 19th century reading is characterized by optimist belief in the justice of the authorities who will undoubtedly reward one's merit or sacrifice, they produce false hope in the clones that they will be exceptional and get, for example, a deferral as in case of Kathy and Tommy. Moreover, literature serves the interests of the system, not giving a chance to the clones to see the real reality as it is. In other words, literature consolidates the clones, giving them faith that their sacrifice will be compensated, causing passive conformity to the system. Performing its disgusting policy, the government of fictional Great Britain is strongly supported by the citizens. Conformism of the people on such an unforgivable matter as cutting out organs originates from the egoism of the British society. Interested in the fate of their loved ones, they are indifferent to strangers. The dystopic society in Ishiguro's novel is founded on the principles of care. The nature of care itself is ambivalent, arising uncomfortable questions, as this can turn caring from a noble attitude into a nasty one. On the one hand, personal selflessness, a desire to wish the best for someone who you love, and selfishness on the other, being unable to see that the well-being of your loved ones is reached at another's cost. Accordingly, in Ishiguro's view, the British are ready to sacrifice others for the benefit of their relatives and friends. Although one part of the society thought cloning was unethical, they preferred to remain silent when they imagined death of their family members. On the other hand, the second part of the citizens did not think that clones were equal to them, as clones were not born in a way as people do. That's why killing of the clones was not a serious matter. It was just like killing of an insect for them. In Never Let Me Go, some characters really show such kind of fear towards clones as we do towards insects. For example, Madam, who fights for the rights of the clones, is afraid of clones in the same way someone might be afraid of spiders. The only protest seen in the novel is the project by Miss Emily and Madam. This project aims to provide clones living at Halsham with modest comfort and good education before starting the donation of organs. However, Miss Emily and Madam do not fiercely oppose the donation program. Supporting the project, they only want the clones to lead a normal life before certain death. Miss Emily and Madam's joint project is basically similar to animal protectors' protest, insisting on pigs to be killed in a more civilized way without using violence. Miss Emily and Madam are not against the donation program. They only ask the government to do the early part of it in a more humane way. Tom is the only and one clone weakly protesting the ways of the system. It should be noted that with his undesirable nervous outbreaks, Tom fights without his awareness for a short time and not effectively. However, not any other clone shows any desire to fight the system. Kathy believes that Tom's outbreaks are caused by the fact that he always knew what would happen in the bottom of his heart. Tom is also the only character who, after a long time judgment, concludes that Miss Lucy was right, insisting on providing the clones with the truth about their future, and not Miss Emily trying to give the clones a happy childhood. According to Tom, the clones should not have been deprived from their right to know the truth, ugly, but still the truth. In conclusion, in Ishiguro's novel, Never Let Me Go, the characters are obedient to the system. They have lost painful and critical perception of unjust and in many cases absurd world. They are inactive and tend to go for conformism. The clones have been brainwashed from their early childhood by their guardians through literature and euphemisms. However, when the clones are already adults capable of judging their fate correctly, their abnormal life has become so natural to them that they cannot imagine to live differently. Similarly, the normal people show conformism to the injustice of the system, as their judgment is based on the complex concept of care. Thank you. If you have any questions, I'll answer them.
Thank you, Tam Tam. Are there any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Our next presenter is Tamar Lomadze with the paper Questioning Vaccination Discourse in the Press and Social Media. Tamar, the floor is yours.
Hello. Thank you. I'll try to open my screen.
Yes, and please, I would like to ask you to observe these 15 minutes.
All right.
Thank you.
You see the screen?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Okay. So hello, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to participate in this extremely interesting conference. As you can see here, the topic of my presentation is vaccination discourse. And before I start discussing and suggesting the structure of my presentation, I would like to mention that I know that's one of the most controversial issues in the whole world, but I'm not here to persuade you in anything or dissuade you anything. The only purpose of my presentation is just to show my reflection on the topic and also to demonstrate the role of language and linguistics in the process of fight against this terrible pandemic. So I would like to show you some initial fears and questions that I had when the pandemic started. So it was, what can be done to end the pandemic, of course, as everybody did, and how quickly it is possible to create vaccines and immunization. So my hopes and expectations were scientific researches, medication, and vaccination. Now what can we witness right now? It's vaccines are already available. However, we have distrust of science, high level of anxiety, and vaccine hesitancy, a lot of fear and disinformation. So my research question is, what is the role of linguistics in the fight against this monster? So I have read plenty of papers on it, and I also suggest a literature review. And I've seen lots of ongoing research, linguistic researches on the topic. And my attempt is to contribute to this process as well. So as you can see, the situation in the world right now concerning vaccination is like that. The dark blue shows the vaccinated countries, and the light blue shows countries with less vaccination or no vaccination at all, the gray one. And what was most threatening for me was the diagram that The Economist published a few days ago, showing the estimated excess deaths in the whole world. As you can see, estimated death is 10 million people in total, and reported deaths from COVID-19 was 3 million. But as some scientists predict and assume, all the rest of the excessive deaths could be caused from the pandemic. So everything is really very threatening, and what I'm really trying to do to calm myself, first of all, and then try to find some ways to contribute to this problem. All right. Okay, now I would like to present the structure of the paper, the whole project. So it's a historical overview of the vaccination, literature review, methodology, and findings and conclusions. So now a very short overview of the history. So in 1798, Edward Jenner created the first vaccine for smallpox. Then in 1970s, 1980s, the period of increasing litigation, and decreased the profitability of vaccine manufacturers started, declining the number of companies producing vaccines. In 1986, the implementation of the National Vaccine Injury Compensation Program started in the USA. And since 1990s, continued media efforts by growing vociferous anti-vaccination lobby that started. In 1998, Andrew Wakefield and 12 of his colleagues published a case series in the Lancet, a British scientific journal, which suggested that the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine may predispose to behavioral regression and pervasive developmental disorder in children. But in 2010, Lancet has retracted the paper. All right, now you can see one of the examples how the vaccine worked. So you can see in red countries that have never eliminated polio in 1988, and following the vaccination process in 2014, there were only a very few places where polio was not eliminated. All right, now methodology of my study. I've decided to combine corpus linguistics and critical discourse analysis, and for the purpose to demonstrate how social media news represent immunization. The purpose of conducting quantitative analysis is to raise reliability of my study and to present broader picture of the discourse concerning vaccination. Considering broader social and historical factors will ensure a better understanding of what people think and how they frame reality. So another reason why I like combination of these two different methodologies is that the implications of lexical choices in the text are very well constructed and very much concentrated. And conducting a keyword analysis also helps us to create quantitative as well as qualitative picture. According to Van Dijk, critical discourse analysis analyzes text not only textually, but in relevance of the context. The most important philosophy concerning the language is its ability to construct reality. As the social construction is defines, there are numerous perspectives from which language is regarded to be the tool of constructing social reality. Due to the fact that we are almost always influenced and manipulated by the discourse, it is where critical discourse analysis plays its role to detect the abuse of power. Here I would like to mention my previous research, which I have conducted supervising my MA student. It concerned the pandemic discourse and how politicians abuse their power and used pandemic as the tool of persuading people to give them votes, and really worked so well. Information selection is a form of social controls, and people form opinions based on the information provided to them. So I have thought about reliable and unreliable sources. So what can be regarded as reliable and unreliable? Which of the following is more popular and frequently read, scientific articles or online news and social network posts? My answer is, of course, social network posts and online news only. Not many people, maybe 1% or even less, read scientific articles every day, for instance. What shall we consider while reading the content apart from the text itself? So we have to think about the authors who wrote this or that article or post and anything. So what sources they come from and what is the date of the publication, because the information changes very frequently. It's updated so quickly that you should have to keep up to date. So now the literature I have read mainly concerned the following topics. So it was critical discourse analysis and corpus linguistic combination to examine term vaccine in online news media, but it did not concern COVID-19 discourse. It concerned some other vaccination discourses. Positive bias towards people who vaccinate. Again, this is the topic of critical discourse analysis, because people are using the language to pigeonhole people who do not vaccinate or people who vaccinate. Pigeonholing people according to their positions on vaccination. They have divided people into anti-vaccinationists, now they are called anti-vaxxers, or people who are not an anti-vaxxer, but who claim not to be an anti-vaxxer, but still they have some questions concerning the very recent vaccine. Public mistrust of vaccines, communication strategies, and campaigns to persuade people to immunize. So rapid spread of misinformation online, which also causes another problem, collocation pattern of vaccines and autism. So this is a very important point. As Bible defines, lexical bundle takes place when there are three or more reoccur frequently in natural oral written discourse. Even if the link between vaccines and autism is refuted, they are still seen as patterning together. They are still believed to be true by majority of people, even if it has been refuted a long time ago in 2010. The role of social media, contribution and moral responsibility of parents to collective well-being, how people articulate their arguments against and for the vaccination, corpus-based analysis to provide decision makers with domain-specific corpus data for further purposes. So here I would like to draw your attention to this point. This turns out to be one of the most important roles of language, to provide decision makers with domain-specific corpus data so that they can act accordingly later. The data that is recorded on the internet cloud that can be used to analyze human behavior patterns, habits, communication methods, and so on to further facilitate industrial development. So here I will demonstrate the stages, how corpora of vaccination discourse is usually compiled. First of all, first stage is preparatory work, corpora compilation, selecting an input in the benchmark corpus. As you can see, it's a quite a complicated process. It implies many stages, and usually many people work on it. I'm not a single scientist, of course. Lots of linguists, apart from linguists, psychologists, sociologists, computer scientists work on it, and they process much information and collect the big data. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to collect much, but I have collected a small corpora, which still gives us some floor to speculate on the vaccination discourse. So here I have an example of refined keyword list from the target corpora, which was created in the beginning of the pandemic. and it's based on the news concerning pandemic. And you can see that the articles, prepositions have been eliminated, and all the other auxiliary verbs have been eliminated. And you can see the keywords, the first 22 keywords concerning pandemic. As you can notice, there is no vaccination mentioned in the beginning. Now, what is happening right now in the whole world? What was most impressive for me was the Lancaster University project. It's a 3-year project that uses corpus linguistic method to study how vaccination, including future vaccine for COVID-19, are talked about in the UK press, UK Parliament, the discourse, and social media. And the research group was given £1 million for this project, and it will last for 3 years. It has been started already, as I remember, in May 1. And through the collaboration with governmental and public health partners, the findings will be used to help address vaccine hesitancy. The project is funded by the Economic and Social Research Council, part of the UK Research and Innovation. New project seeks to improve public health campaigns by examining language around vaccinations. The reasons for vaccine hesitancy are complex, but they need to be understood to be addressed effectively, says Professor Elena Semoni, who is very much involved in corpus linguistics, and she has much experience in conducting research in medical discourse. And she usually contributes to the communication process between patients and caretakers. And I also, the eye-catching was also another project that was conducted in the USA. A Center for Countering Digital Hate is a non-profit NGO that seeks to disrupt the architecture of the online hate and misinformation. So CCDH is seeking to educate the American public about dangers of the anti-vax industry that is actively interested to undermine the rollout of the COVID vaccination. And they attempt to bring science and facts to the forefront and alert the public to dangerous agenda and of anti-vaxxer leaders. What is most impressive, they have detected 12 people, 12 most active anti-vaxxers, who play leading roles in spreading digital misinformation about COVID vaccine. And they have published 80-page report concerning the biography of the anti-vaxxers, their posts, how they circulate the posts, and their posts are followed, imagine, by 59 million people. It's a huge number, and they are one of the biggest influencers in the whole world. So now, as for my personal corpus, I have collected corpus from, for instance, I have from the online sources, one of which is a social media discussion, which was followed, which followed the popular TV program, Prime Show. Maybe you remember the one concerning vaccination, where people, where doctors were invited, and also anti-vaxxers had their floor, and the television then extracted the speech of an anti-vaxxer, which was circulated a lot on Facebook. And I have collected all the comments of people, as you can see, and there are mostly positive comments concerning anti-vaxxers, everyone praising the anti-vaxxer and the condemning doctors. I know I could have detected not a single comment which appreciated the advice of doctors who were present there, one of the leading doctors in Georgia. As you can see, the context refers to the danger of the vaccination, and people claiming that the vaccination has been created very few months ago. That's the reason they do not trust scientists. They do not want to become to participate in the trial of the vaccination, and it's dangerous for their health. So you can see the contest plot of vaccination itself here. I've collected approximately 100 comments following this video extract from the program. And you can see even emojis of people praising Tina, who was one of the anti-vaxxer participating on the TV program. all of the commenters are praising her and thanking her and appreciating her efforts to persuade us not to vaccinate. Another corpus that I have compiled was a BBC discussion concerning debate whether employers should be allowed to require staff to vaccinate. So no jab or no job. But here we can see that opinions are divided in two parts. Half of the people claim that vaccines are safe and they should vaccinate, and they should, so that they are able to come back to normal life. Though it is some people claim that it's against human rights to make people vaccinate. As I have read as well many researches, Great Britain is one of the leading countries who successfully organized the vaccination campaign, so that they have vaccinated approximately 14% of their population. Also, Israel turned out to be one of the leading countries who vaccinated people. And what was most impressive was their experience of collecting 27 experts, including sociologists, psychologists, linguists who worked on this hate, rape, language, and social network. They also detected misinformation, and they immediately blocked all the misinformation spread throughout social media. And it turned out it really worked, and giving the immediate responses to the questions and doubts gave them floor to persuade people to vaccinate. I also compiled the Economist article. Again, the situation is similar in the whole world. As we can see, half of the people are against vaccination. Most important collocations are, for instance, vaccine diplomacy, vaccine doses, also the implementation of vaccine in the whole world, making people to vaccinate. Also, I can see the highlighted here. How is usually vaccines defined? Are they qualified enough or not? Does propaganda work? And should it be allowed or not? Also, it was a quite interesting compilation of texts from Radio Tavi Supleba, which mostly pictured the positive attitude of the Georgian population, because it provided mainly scientific reviews of the vaccines itself. And they claim that most of the people are just waiting for the more explanation and clarification from scientists. So the final findings and recommendations that will be published in my paper will mainly concern the comparison and contrast of the comments from different countries and their comparison to Georgian reality. The comparison mainly showed almost the same fears and concerns of the population in any place of the world. People read and trust social media and layperson opinions more than they read scientific articles and listen to doctors. Communication strategies of the government should be carefully planned and based on the discourse analysis, preferably conducted by corpus analysts. So this was my purpose, to demonstrate our role and significance of linguistic work in this process. So thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Okay, thank you, Tamar Lomaze. Do you
Any
have
questions, colleagues? Thank you, Tamar, so much. Thank you. I was really nicely surprised to see that you are using this ENT software to analyze. May I?
It's ENTCO. It's ENTCO.
Yeah. May I ask you, where did you learn that? How did you encounter this?
Actually, I have done a Lancaster University course in corpus linguistics, and then I have applied this tool in my PhD dissertation. I worked on political linguistics, and I have compiled political corpora. And I have applied Lansbox as well, Lansbox and ENTCOG to analyze my corpora.
Did you have a chance to meet Professor Fairclough at Lancaster University?
Unfortunately, no. I just did online courses.
Yeah, because as you mentioned, critical discourse analysis. I guess he's number one in this direction. This is why I asked you.
Yeah. I actually I really am looking forward to find some group of scientists in Georgia and abroad who would suggest.
We can discuss. And please get connected to these people from Northern Arizona University. They are doing a great job in corpus linguistics. They are really experts in this direction. So you should find. Please write to Kevin Hershey. You will find a lot of things in common.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, Sidika, please.
Thank you, Mr. Nicholas. And our next presenter is Diana Nemsit-Verizde. If I'm pronouncing wrong, please warn me. I'm unfamiliar with Georgian language. If you are ready, you may start.
Yes, okay, thank you. Hello, I'm Diana from Kutaisi State University. I will just share my screen now. And I will start my presentation. I'll be as quick as it is possible. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see yours.
Yes, as I said, I am from Kutaisi State University. I'm a PhD student, and today I will speak about phraseologists as a gender explicator in the cultural civilizational aspects. So this will be on the example of English and Georgian languages. So phraseologism is a solid utterance of words that is characteristic of any language, and they are different in nature and origin. So they can be reflecting a purely national reality, biblical origin derived from ancient mythology, reflecting well-known historical events. Origin sometimes is difficult to determine. In the meaning of phraseology, researchers distinguish between a number of components. They can be signifying, denotative, connotative, and ethnocultural. So this last one is very important in linguistic literature. Phraseologies are sometimes referred to as idioms, proverbs, figurative expressions, and figurative words. They carry extensive contextual and subtextual information, which is often driven by the cultural and civilizational factors of a nation. So phraseologies are in a communicative context where the gender factor is constantly taken into account. Of course, people have long had established some different stereotypes, different views that combine language, culture, and gender. Gender, this term shifted from biology to different disciplines like sociology, political science, ethnography, culturology, and etc. Stereotypes are very tightly connected to the gender factor, and it is frequently expressed in phraseologisms. There are sharp characteristic frames like sociocultural norms, behavioral models, dress styles, psychological characteristics, and so on. Gender concepts of man and woman are different in Georgian and in English languages. According to stereotypes established in Georgian language, a woman has many flaws. So comparing a man with her always has a negative connotation. We can find such phrases and phrases in Georgian language. He is hysterical as a woman. Do not act like a woman. You should not wear pants. You should wear a dress. Masculine character derives like a man, as if women cannot drive well. Thinks like a man, leads family like a man. So we can find lots of Georgian proverbs which are very critical to women, like women's hair is long but the brain is short. Despite clever and brainless can be both male and female. This proverb is connected to some different stereotypes and probably has its history. I don't know. Nowadays, long hair is worn by both men and women. So it is another proverb. It's better to have a daughter rather than be childless, probably because in Georgian culture, it's very important to have offspring who would boost family name like sons. And from ancient times, Georgian people were in constant war position. So that is why having son was considered to be hope and power for the families. The 9 women's cleverness will be put in a shell of a nut, and there will still be room left. There is also such saying and proverb. So as if the main function of a woman was to complete housework, raise children, and they didn't have any common with education. As for English proverbs, if we look at them, we can see that they are less critical to women. A man chases a woman until she catches him. So it may say that a man is an important figure, but the last word is for women. Men make houses, women make homes. So women in mischief are wiser than men. So there is also behind every successful man, there is a woman. Boys will be boys. To excuse some male behavior, it is still androcentric. Women will have the last word. It's a man's world, and etc. So, as we see in some proverbs, a woman is clearly dominant. She determines this or that situation, while a man depends on her. If we compare English and Georgian proverbs, the difference is noticeable. In Georgian proverbs, a woman is presented in a more critical context, which of course is determined by cultural and social factors, while in English proverbs, there is virtually no sign of criticism. Moreover, there are not offensive epithets. Also interesting are the phraseologies on the example of the idiom confrontation, the existence of the society conveyed by Georgian and English idioms. The culture gives us a great contrast in such case as well. As for the idioms, I'm presenting only some of them to be short in my presentation, but I've encountered lots of idioms where was mentioned Adam, from the time of Adam, Adam's time, son of Adam, and as we see, these idioms are dominated and the name of Adam is associated with male gender. We don't have such things like son of Eve or Eve's time and such stuff. So it's very interesting to pay attention to mustache, like this is generally not only worn by men. And so there are lots of idioms, shaving the mustache, and I don't have this mustache. So it was considered to be the sign of honesty, especially in the past. If a man gave a piece of his mustache to the other person, so it was like a solid promise and it shouldn't have been broken. I was looking for such example connected to women, but I could not find one. So only all the strength, faithfulness, and commitment is only associated with a man. So as for English idioms, a woman's work is never done, has a lot of responsibilities. Be a woman of her word, so reliable woman, a woman on a mission, determined woman, a woman's place in the home, woman should be at home, make a man of somebody to make somebody stronger. So it's the same in here. So to be man, it's like equal to be strong, a man of a people, someone who gets on with everybody, talk man to man. So it means to talk frankly. So based on the analysis of the above phraseologies, we see that the phraseologies store a great deal of information about human existence, thinking, views, stereotypes, priorities. While I was observing the definition of a proverb, I saw such thing that proverbs can be borrowed from different cultures, from different countries. And I believe that all of these proverbs, which are sometimes used in Georgia today in a humorous way more than in seriously, I think they are borrowed because, of course, today everything is changed. I made some small questionnaire with my students. I teach English at a public school and state university, and I put them questions: how strong women were, who was a main person in the family, and I saw that everything is modernized nowadays. They don't think about this like that, but still we have such proverbs in our books. We sometimes laugh at them, and it's very interesting to see the culture beyond it. So phraseology, as already mentioned, arises in a communicative context where gender factor is constantly taken into account, where also people have long established stereotypes, different views that combine language, culture, and gender. So I tried to be as brief as possible. So if you have any questions, I would answer.
Thank you, Diana. That was a clear presentation. If you have any questions. If you don't have any questions, we can move forward to other presentation.
Okay, thank you. I will try to stop my presentation.
Okay, thank you. And our next presenters are Manana Garibashvili and Ingna Kemalze and Nunu Geldivashdili.
Yes,
Manana is the presenter, I think.
yeah, I want to share my slide. Is it possible to switch off the previous one?
Is it possible to unshare your screen, please?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, yes, I'm trying, but I can only see pause share. I'm trying to find where is it, but new share. So here, share sound. I'm trying to turn off everything, but I don't know.
Right. It should be right in the center.
Sorry?
It's right in the center at the bottom.
Yeah, I see, but there is just a pause share, not stop. Well, I will leave the meeting, then I will join again.
No,
Maybe this will solve the problem.
Okay,
yeah,
thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, sorry.
All right. Okay, to share my. Okay, do you see it?
Yes, we can see your screen.
All right. Hello again. It's a great pleasure for me to be with you and attend this interesting conference and to see familiar faces like Nicola, Mary, Tamar. So really, I'm happy to be with you. And after such interesting and important issues like vaccination, I'll try to somehow entertain you and just present the topic concerning animated films, but linguistically they are really very interesting. So as you see, we've our research has got 3 co-authors. Inga Trimaladze, Dr. Inga Trimaladze, Professor Nunu Gildiashvili, and me, but unfortunately for some certain serious reasons, they are not able to attend the meeting, and I'll try to present in whole and try to introduce the issue as well as much as possible. So the issue concerns the linguistic characteristics of satire and humor in English, French, and Georgian animated films. And before analyzing just talking about the research, I would rather apply to Encyclopedia Britannica, which defines animation as the art of making inanimate objects appear to move. And as for cinema and animation movies as well, they they belong to these. They belong to synthetic arts, and animation movies like cinemas involve visual and musical elements as well as the storyline. And from these elements, the visual one is the most important, but it does not mean that it does not neglect the other two. That is the musical element content and storyline. On the contrary, all these three elements are necessary for perfection. I'll just mention a few words about the history of animation, not generally, but as far as our field of interest, the animation of English, French, and Georgian animation. I would point out the golden age of American animation, which was a period in the history of America that began with the popularization of sound cartoons in somewhere in 1928 and ending in the late 60s. As for French animation, it is the longest in the world, as France has created some of the earliest animated films dating back to the late 19th century and invented many of the foundational technologies of early animation. And the history of Georgian animation is also quite long and interesting. So it emerged in the 1920s. However, the first animations, as experts say, could hardly be qualified as films. They were cartoons made for purpose of Bolshevik propaganda. And the first proper animation films were created in 1929 when the authorities commissioned director Kotebi Kaperidze to make a satirical film that would criticize excessive bureaucracy, and the film was called My Grandmother. As you see on the slide, these are the pictures of the three animated movies which we tried to analyze linguistically. We decided to choose to search for the for such animated movies where the main heroes would be mice and rats. So in this regard, we searched for The Great Mouse Detective. This is an American Walt Disney cartoon from French animation. We searched for quite a contemporary movie, Ernest and Celestine, and the Georgian from the Georgian animation, we selected Zuna and Zruzuna, very popular, especially among our generation, Zuna and Zruzuna. The reason why we decided to choose the films where the main heroes would be mice is that since prehistoric times, rats and mice have always accompanied man, and as a result, they are animals which occupy a very strong symbolism and which are strongly present in the folkloric and artistic fields. Throughout history, these rodents are frequently confused and very often share the same cultural aspects. So before I just introduce you the linguistic aspects of these movies, I would rather share you the synopsis of these movies very briefly. Great Mouse Detective is a 1986 American animated mystery adventure film produced by Walt Disney Feature Animation and released by Walt Disney Pictures. The Victorian London, England, a little mouse girl's toy maker father is abducted by a peg-legged bat. She enlists the aid of Basil of Baker Street, the rodent world's answer to Sherlock Holmes. This case expands as Basil uncovers the crimes linked to a plot against the crown itself. Ernest and Celestine is, as I told you, quite new animation. It was co-produced, internationally co-produced in 2012. And the story of an unlikely friendship between a bear Ernest and a young mouse. And there is a world where the bears live above the ground in their cities and the rodents live below in their underground ones in mutual fear and hate. And as for this, the Georgian animation Zuna and Zruzuna, which was directed by Akaki Hintebidze in 1961. These are two country mice in love. An old local baron kidnaps Zuna and puts an end to their happiness. Zruzuna is desperate and thinks about giving up on life, but help comes from Alice, who leaves challenge the kidnapper. Thus, Zruzuna is a famous cartoon character, a brave mouse who shows that nothing can stop a person when he is in love. So the moral of the story is to fight for the love, because when something is worth having, it's worth fighting for. As as for the linguistic review from the very first topic, from the so I mentioned that the linguistic review will be based on the identification of satire and humor in animation movies, and we would not avoid irony as well, because this irony is a kind of instrument, stylistic device, which helps to express sarcasm and satire. So we try to generalize these three concepts, stating that satire is the mind, that is wits, irony is the reasoning, rhetorical tool, and humor is the substance. So humor is what causes in readers and in audience entertainment, laughter, and amusement, and it concerns with emotional aspects and the tendency, and it is the tendency of particular cognitive experiences to provoke laughter and provide amusement. As for irony, sarcasm, and satire, they indicate mockery of something or someone. Well, now I will try to show the examples taken from the text, movie text. But before I start reading them out, I want to say that in animation, as I've already mentioned, this visual and musical elements add this humorous and satirical coloring to the text. So while reading out these sentences, they might, at first glance, they might not appear so humorous or satirical, but unless they are put in the context that this visual and musical elements are added. But still, I tried to underline and put in bold the phrases and words which give additional humorous and ironical coloring to the sentences, starting with this Great Mouse Detective American animation. This young lady is in need of assistance. I think you ought. So remember, Dawson, we are low-life ruffians. This is humor by using embarrassing words with less negative connotation. Come on, old fella. This is usage of colloquial words in a humorous way. So dream on and drink your beer. Your baby's here. It's a very interesting, example of humor expressed with a stylistic device of pun. Sorry, Chubby, you should have chosen your friends more carefully. This is an ironic implication to the plump person. Oh, I had so many ingenious ideas. I didn't know which to choose. He's a genius, Dawson, twisted for evil. This is a pure satirical sentence. Now we simply pursue our peg-legged friend until he leads us to the girl's father. This is irony, the kind of ironic implication to the corpulence effect of a negative hero. Well, unfortunately, for the presentation, we could not support, the author could not support the some certain examples of satire and humor, but generally we could say that in this animated movie, Ernest Celestine points to herd behavior, abuse of power, and petty bourgeois violence. And this joyful tale of friendship offers a smart commentary on prejudice and acceptance of people's differences, a very important message for children today. And in this animation, a dark strand of humor and some sly visual gags in this clever tale of opposites. And this is a movie that symbolically compare and contrast two enemy by blood groups. The movie starts with fun and entertaining scene about the early indoctrination of young mice kids. And the last movie, Suna and Srutsuna. Well, I forgot to say that to my astonishment, while observing the American movie, The Great Mouse Detective, in the text, the number of ironical and satirical sentences seriously exceeded the number of humorous sentences. But in Tuna and Trutuna, the whole, and my Georgian colleagues and friends will agree me that the whole movie with this visual and musical elements, these are humorous movie, and the still and we try to search for the corresponding linguistic aspects of satire and humor in the text. Here, this is a short dialogue. Well, it's not a dialogue, but a monologue from Tsutuna asking himself the question, to be or not to be, that is the question. In the depth of despair, he puts himself a question, and we know this is a famous soliloquy in the works of Shakespeare in Hamlet, but here it has got this phrase, this saying has got humorous coloring, and also a very interesting reply on this question, to be Trutsunjan. So if you see on the slide, I have just underlined and put in bold the very last element, the very last word Jan, which is not English, definitely not Georgian, but Armenian. And the Armenians use it when they want to express kind and gentle attitude to the interlocutor. And it's hardly translatable, but it means something like dear and dearest. And here they use using the usage of such kind of borrowed word also added humorous coloring to effect to the sentence and to the context. The second case is the set of humorous sentences. People, mostly they are toast. People are toasting to Trutsuna with a drink on the raft, applying with the following words. Here's to the doe sitting in the cage, suffering and waiting for his sweetheart. The translation is not so, the translated version is not so much humorous, but the original sentence, that is the Georgian one, which includes the colloquial urban language of the late 19th, early 20th, also adds additional humorous coloring, and it's really interesting linguistically. The other sentence of this kind is here is to a young man standing in the water but still on fire. Here's to the moon that will light the way to the friend searching for his companion. I wouldn't just overload you with more examples. I would rather share with you two more, and the rest, quite a number of examples from these three movies will be included in the paper, which will be published later. So the sentence, hey, you are an idiot. What are you doing? Are you celery to come to the world for the second time? This is an ironic implication towards Rudzuna. And won't you leave the place now? Get out of here. Again, do please have a look at the Georgian original text, Georgian sentence, the last exclamatory sentence, which is not again Georgian, but the Russian sentence, and it fits to the context and gives an ironic implication to the whole context. Well, in contrary, I can say that all of these three animated animation movies were very, very interesting from the linguistic side. And yes,
Manana, I'm sorry for interrupting, but your time is about to be over.
Yeah. I've already finished. I'm already just, thank you for your attention. If you got any questions, I'm here. I'll do my best, though my colleagues are not here, still try to answer them as much as possible. Thank you again for listening. I'll stop sharing.
Okay, thanks for presentation. Do you have any questions, anyone? If you don't have, we can move to other presenter, who is Huda Halawasi and Ahmed Mohammed Jassim. Their presentation is What's in a Laughter, a Glance at Humor in Environmental Protests. Are you ready, Huda, Mr. Huda?
Okay, I'm here. Thank you very much.
Okay, you may start.
Okay. I don't know what to say, how to start my greeting. Is it good morning, good evening, good afternoon? Wherever.
Good afternoon here
Good
in Georgia.
afternoon.
Hello, Nicholas. How's everything with you?
Good to see you again. Thank you for joining and for being a regular participant.
Thank you so much for giving us another chance actually for me and for my colleagues all over the world to participate in such a wonderful, let me see, series of conference series. This is not my first participation actually, but this time there's a surprise for you, Nicholas. I have my student over here with me, Ahmed Jassim, is waiting for his turn to participate and present his or our actually abridged paper. I may start sharing the screen. Okay. Is it clear for you? It's not?
We can't see now.
Okay, just a minute, please. Now is it okay, right? Right?
Yes, it has come now.
Okay. I may start presenting the first part of our research paper and then giving the chance for my student Ahmed to continue presenting the research paper. Ahmed actually is an MA candidate working with me actually on an MA, or let's say MA thesis. His thesis actually tackles a story which is very important in our daily life. It is about environmental or eco-linguistics actually. The focus of the thesis is that humor actually plays a significant role in environmental protests. And this paper actually is a abridged paper from the thesis itself. It's going to be, I believe it's going to be one of the chapters, chapter 3 in our thesis, which is in a process. The title of the research paper is as follows: What's in a Laughter? A glance at a humor in environmental protest. What we have over here is a triangle: laughter or humor, number 2, environment, and number 3, protests. We would like to know in this descriptive article, what's the connection between these 3 items in this research paper. Now, if we move to, let me move to, okay. Okay, let me move to the second, okay. Here is an introduction, some sort of introduction or a greeting from my student and me. And here we have our emails. And this is a summary or table of content of the research paper. Number 1, we have what's protest. Number 2, we have the origin of the term. Number 3, tools of protest. Number 4, humor as a language of protest. Number 5, samples of the use of humor in protest. And number 6, functions of protest actually. Let me start with the first question or the first part of the research paper, which is the bigger question: what's the protest? Actually, daily we watch TV, we listen to news, the social media, the internet connection. We noticed that the protest or the individual public are in continuous disagreement with the regime. And this is a very big question. We want to know, what do individual public want all over the world? I'm not talking about one particular area. We have heard of Arabi al-Arabi or Arabic Spring in the Middle East. We know that there is a struggle between regimes and the public in USA, in UK. It's not a particular spot in the world, but we have this expansion of a protest all over the world. This part of disagreement, I mean, this point of disagreement between the regime and the public. What's after this disagreement? Linguistically speaking, if we move actually to a dictionary, lexicographer, we know that the protest is the showing of disagreement, a statement or action that shows that one does not like or agree with something. And here we have the situation of the protesters all over the world. We have actually two parties, the authoritarian represented by the regime and the non-authoritarian represented by the individual people or public. Here lies the problem. There is a disagreement between the regime and the public. Originally, or if we move to the etymology of the term, we have some records which actually are taken from very old time, and it comes from the Latin term protestar, meaning to declare publicly, from the root testari, which means to testify. So the term, or let me say the event itself of protesting, is not new, since we have its origin in old records. So it means that we have it's there in old time. The event of a protest. Some history about the term itself. We have 50 years ago, sociologists consider protest to be an undemocratic intrusion into politics. In the wake of the movements of the 1960s, protest is now seen as an important addition to democratic politics and an important factor in the transition from authoritarian to democratic regimes. So there's a sort of a change in conceptualization, or in the conceptualization of the term itself. In old time, it's taken just like as the term or the event itself of protesting is taken just like a sign of a democratic intrusion into the public, into the politics or the regime's rules. But in the modern time, in the 1960s, this view or conceptualization has been changed into something democratic, something positive. So once we have a protest in any community, it means that there is a sort of democracy. People are asking for their rights. Two big questions actually, vigorous questions, let me say, vital questions are necessary to be raised in our part of this part actually of the research. What do we want as public? This is the first bigger question. I mean, reasons behind the emergence of protest. And number two, how to express our needs in a protest. If we focus on the first question, what do we want as public? Stories raised all over the world, even from kids, not only adults or old people. All of us are asking for our rights in our places, in our homelands. we ask the regime, we want the regime to participate in a way or another to give us some, not all of our rights. We suffer a lot, and after or behind the suffering, there is reason, more than one reason. Number two, how to express our needs in a protest. This is another bigger question. We have different ways actually to ask for our rights, and it could be, you know, that we have banners, we have the social media, we have the pictures, caricature, the memes, different ways actually to express ourselves as public or as individuals actually, to ask for our rights. The situation is completely different from one place to another, from one individual to another, from one community to another, depending on the basic issue that after having or protesting. As I mentioned, we have tools of a protest. I mentioned them just before a minute ago. Banners, you know that, banners and memes, cartoons, posters, etc. But in our research, I do believe that humor shares a big room actually in all these tools. People nowadays use or are starting using or have started actually using humor in all these tools to express themselves, to ask for their rights from the regime. Now, here we come to the core of our research paper, humor as a language of protest. Using those tools, or in using those tools, sometimes we need a language. Sometimes we do not need a language. Sometimes we have, just like dressing in animal costume or whatsoever. This is again, this is a sign or a tool for protest. Sometimes we have sometimes text with drawings, and sometimes just we have drawings and cartoons or whatsoever. But is humor actually, the sense of a humor, the laughter is there, but after this laughter is not something funny or joyful. No, there are actually bigger stories and serious issues to be raised. Now we're going to explain how we could make use humor in a protest to raise different issues and to come up to basic points that we want the regime to take care of, to consider, to maybe heal if we have problems and whatsoever. I may I may leave this part for my colleague actually and student Ahmed to actually raise these points and explain some samples taken from different places from the world. Thank you very much.
Before starting, you don't have so many minutes to continue. I should say that, Mr. Ahmed. Just 2 minutes, you can go on.
I just
Okay.
Just a minute, just to share my screen.
Okay. Ms. Huda, please unshare your screen.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Is it clear for all?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Samples of the use of humor in protest. Figure 1. In figure 1, humor speaks to climate change. Humor lies in the text. If you look at this picture of the woman who dressed as a polar bear with the text on written climate migration. Humor lies in the text and the polar bear's head that is worn by the woman. In figure 1, the polar bear is showing the irony of the situation where humans affect the nature negatively. The humorous tool implies that the polar bears are migrating, trying to look for another homeland rather than the northern or southern pole. In figure 2, in figure 2, the use of this meme is hilarious and a threat simultaneously. The word paddling and the character that holds it implies something like threatening the regime. That is, a paddling has become a minor meme on the internet and is famous for Jasper threatening simple things with a paddling. Humor speaks to desertification. The humorous question shows that this woman is satirizing the power holders for their selfishness when it is about environment. Desertification is a serious problem in most parts of the world due to the bad behavior of man in logging the trees and the green parts. In figure 4, sarcasm is shown here because the mankind are responsible for the destruction of environment. While if you looked at what is written in this poster, we never noticed the beauty of nature because we were too busy trying to recreate it. This is a contradiction in between a human behavior and what is written here. In figure 5, the sense of humor lies in the discrepancy of mankind's deeds, which are shown in this caricature. Humans and environment are interrelated with each other. Environment needs a human and vice versa. The sense of humor here that mankind are continue destroying the planet, but whenever they need fresh air, they come back to environment.
Sorry for interrupting again, but your time is over.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for presentation. If you have any questions, you can ask them from social media or Gmail, maybe. And our last online presentation is from Mariam Zakarashvili, I think. If you are ready, you may start, Mariam. If you are speaking, we can't hear you.
Good afternoon, my dear colleagues. I am Mariam Zakariashvili, Tel Aviv State University. I am introduction you a presentation about NCONG, Congo Darsen, a linguistic research tool. Kolegebo, es ჩართვა არის მე არ ვარ ინგლისურიანი სპეციალისტი, მე ვარ ინფორმატიკის მიმართულებით ბატონო ნიკოლოს ბოდიშს მოვიხდი თუ ისევე ვისაუბრებ ინგლისურად, როგორც ჩემ კოლეგებმა ისაუბრეს და ამიტომაც იმედია შემინდობთ ამ ხარეს.
არა უშავს. ისე ინგლისურად გააკეთებთ ხო ქალბატონო?
ინგლისურად ამან ყველაფერი, მაგრამ თუ რაღაცა პატარა ხარვეზი იყოს, იმედი თქვენ მხარდაჭერას ვიმედოვნებ და არა უშავს შემინდობთ. მადლობა.
Yeah, let me briefly explain. Ms. Zakariashvili is not a language specialist. Her research is on concordance, corpus linguistics, but from the perspective of IT. And once she's not a language specialist, please be loyal to some language proficiency issues in her presentation. But I do praise Kalvatoni Mariam for her courage to present in English. Thank you so much.
Plan presentation. Introduction. Contents: what is ENCONC, downloading ENCONC, starting ENCONC, making a corpus, loading a corpus, word list tool, concordance tool, collocates tool, clusters and grams tool, keyword tools, and conclusion. Introduction. The modern world is developing very rapidly. In this regard, it is necessary as much as possible to simplify the efforts assigned to perform the research task. The growing tendency of simplification, analysis, and calculation is leading to the active use of computer tools in linguistic research. The aim of this ethic is to analyze the use of software as a useful tool for linguistic research, with an emphasis on the concordance and characteristics of the ENCONC concordance software product. What is ENCONC? ENCONC is a program for analyzing electronic text, that is corpus linguistic, in order to find and reveal patterns in the language. It was created by Lawrence Anthony of Waseda University. It is one of the most well-designed and easy-to-use corpus tools out there. ENCONC, a freeware corpus analysis toolkit for concordancy and text analysis. Step first, downloading ENCONC. ENCONC is freely available from Lawrence Anthony's ENCONC homepage on this link. Step second, starting ENCONC. ENCONC does not require installation. It is a standalone program that runs by simply clicking on this icon. Step third, making a corpus. In order to analyze text electronically, it must be in a format readable by ENCONC. This format is called plain text file or just text file. It has the extension of Texter. In Windows, the include default program to read and create a text file is Notepad. Step 4, loading the corpus. You are following the instruction. Step 5, word list tool. Step 6, concordance tool. You are following the instruction. Click on the word from the list in the word list tab and will automatically jump to the concordance tab. Alternatively, if you already know which word you wish to search for, click on the concordance tab, enter word into the search box, click start menu. A list of words should be listed in the main text box. Step 7, the concordance plot tool. The concordance plot tool provides search result as a barcode graph. This allows you to visually the entry points of concordance elements in the text. Step 8, file view tool. The file view tool displays the text of a file, which allows you to analyze the result obtained with other ENCONC tool to more closely. Step 9, cluster tool and grams tool. Step 10, collocates tool. You are following the instruction. Step 11, keyword list tool. You are following the instruction. Tool requires you to do several complex steps and also reference corpus text file. Step 12, saving result. Result can be saved to the clipboard, saved as the file, text saved to a PostScript file for the concordance tool, or saved to a new window using keyboard commands, the appropriate option in the file menu, or by clicking on Save Window button in each tool. Respectively, also it is possible to launch multiple clones of ENCONC by double-clicking the X file. Now let's see the practice process of using the ENCONC concordance program tools while working on the linguistic research of text. ბატონო ნიკოლოზ, მე მგონი აი ეს ეკრანი უკვე ჩანს, სადაც პრაქტიკულად ვუჩვენებ ამ ვიდეოს.
დიახ, კი, ვხედავ.
დიახ, გავუშვებ. წინასწარ გავამზადე, რომ დრო არ დამკარგო და მადლობა.
Okay, thank you.
აქ არის downloading Antgong. Starting Antgong. Tools. Global setting. Interface of Antgong Pro software. Making text. Extension text, notepad. Open directory, search directory, and open this file. Antgong corpus linguistic, open the directory. What list? Choose only and contacts. Cluster engrams. List and last command. ბატონო ნიკოლოზ, თქვენ დაგესაუბრებით, ეს პროგრამა, რისი წარმოჩინებას გავაკეთეთ, ძირითადად ფილოლოგების გამოსაყენებელია. მე ამჯერად მისი გამოყენება ტექნოლოგიური პროცესი წარმოვადგინე და ფილოლოგიურ მეცნიერებათა წარმომადგენლებმა გაცილებით ჩემზე კარგად იციან კორპუს ლინგვისტიკა რა არის და შესაბამისად როგორ ჭირდებათ აი ეს ელემენტები, კონკორდანსიც, კოლოკეიტიც, ენგრამებიც, აი მათთვის არის საინტერესო, როდესაც ტექსტის კვლევები მიდის. დიახ. Yes,
So, dear friends, actually, what Mrs. Zakariashvili showed is the program that, if you remember, Tamar Dolidze, Lomadze, I think was her family name, showed the concordance and the corpus that she analyzed. So this is the software. I also asked her the question about the software. So this is just free of charge. It's actually it's open access, and yeah, you could make a very good use of this particular software if you are to analyze. So later on, yeah, after the conference, you can make a good use of this program. And please get connected to Tamar Lomadze because she's knowledgeable of this program. I can also be of some help. And Kevin Hershey from Northern Arizona University. Yeah, please get in touch with these people.
Thank you. Thank you. In conclusion, consequently, in this presentation, we analyze software as a useful tool for linguistic research and emphasize on the concordance and characteristics of the ENCOM concordance software product. Practically, we represent the process of conducting linguistic research of a text. The program has both advantages and disadvantages. For example, it does not work in Georgian text. Generally, ENCOM concordance is a useful tool for linguistics. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you for presentation.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions, anyone? Now we have finished the online presentation with Mariam, and now Mr. Nicholas will share you the recorded presentation.
Yes, sure. Thank you. Thank you, Sidika. Please give me a second. I will get the files. So the first one is a recorded session for Marina Zoranyan's presentation. So let me open it. And once I open it, could you please confirm if you hear the sound?
Hello, everybody. My name is Marina Zaranyan, and the topic of my presentation is a terrible fish as a symbol of the lost youth in Sylvia Plath's poem, Mirror. Sylvia Plath is one of the most dynamic and admired American poets of the 20th century, and one of the founders of the genre of confessional poetry in English-speaking literature. She is less known by her pen name, Victoria Lucas. Plath was awarded the Pulitzer Prize posthumously in 1982 for the collected poems. Confessional poetry or confessionalism is a style of writing that emerged in the United States in the 1950s, 1960s. It is associated with such poets as Robert Lowell, Sylvia Plath, Anne Sexton, John Berryman, Allen Ginsberg, and William DeWitt Snodgrass. Confession here means a disclosure of some sort which is strictly personal and which has not been made public so far. Confessional poetry differs in content and style from other types of poetry. This genre deals with taboo topics that were not previously discussed in poetry, such as addiction, mental health, interpersonal relationships. Confessional poets present in their works intensely personal life experiences of their own suffering and crisis. It was the American critic Rosenthal who first introduced the term confessional about a certain kind of poetry different from other modes of lyrics. It happened while he was reviewing Robert Lowell's collection of poems and prose, the title of which was Life Studies, and it was published in 2001. The book contains poems that are regarded as confessional since they document Lowell's struggle with mental illness. Rosenthal defines confessional poetry as poetry that goes beyond customary bounds of reticence or personal embarrassment. As Rosenthal states, in confessional poetry, the private life of the poet himself, especially under the stress of psychological crisis, becomes a major theme. Thus, confessional poetry is called the poetry of the personal or I. The poems of Sylvia Plath occupy a special place in American literature due to its nature, topics, treatment, and imagery. Her life and bitter experiences have influenced her poetry and the presentation of her material. According to an American writer and poet, Joyce Carol Oates, Plath is one of the most celebrated and controversial of post-war poets writing in English. Plath's poems are autobiographical. They explore her mental suffering, her unfortunate marriage to poet Ted Hughes, conflicts with her parents. Her stressful mental state has found its reflection in poems full of pain, challenge, and anger. Her husband's love affair with another woman broke the heart of Sylvia Plath, and she died on February 11, 1963. Suffering from the nervous breakdown and melancholia, Plath committed suicide, putting her head in the gas oven. Poem Mirror by Sylvia Plath is a compelling work of art and a remarkable piece of literature. It exhibits many of the thematic and stylistic qualities which made its author one of the best-known poets of her generation. The poem was composed in 1961, just 2 years before Plath's suicide, a 2-year period which ironically was among the most productive in her literary career. It was first published posthumously in 1971 by Ted Hughes in the collection of poems Crossing the Water. Mirror contains many autobiographical elements that have to do with poet's difficult life. It is one of the Plath's darkest and the most haunting poems, which clearly depicts her own self-doubt, fears, and feeling of inadequacy. Here, Plath skillfully conveys her strong emotions and employs a technique which introduces an element of confusion and obscurity. Generally speaking, word mirror has a symbolic meaning both in real life and literature. Physically, mirrors reflect light and thus reflect the world around us. Spiritually, light is symbolically associated with illumination, awareness, and wisdom. Therefore, in terms of spiritual symbolism, mirrors reflect truth, thus reflecting reality. From the psychological point of view, mirrors symbolize the threshold between the two minds, conscious and unconscious. But looking into a mirror, one may look into the depths of his or her subconsciousness. The image the mirror produces is hence symbolic and can be interpreted both on the conscious and subconscious levels. In literature, mirrors have been employed to symbolize a variety of things. Sylvia Plath's poem Mirror is an example of the symbolic use of a mirror in literature. The poem describes a young woman who is growing older while she looks into her mirror. The mirror struggles with the loss of her beauty, admitting each day that she is getting old. It is not clear whether the poem covers years or whether the woman is seeing a reflection of her future self. It seems so that she wants to discover who she is by looking into it. From her early age, deep inside, Plas was afraid of ever growing old and settling down. She was determined to become a writer and not a housewife. In her journal, in which she made notes almost daily until her death, being a 17-year-old teenager, she confessed, "Somehow I have to keep and hold the rapture of being 17. Every day is so precious. I feel infinitely sad, and the thought of all this time melting farther and farther away from me as I grew older. Now it is the perfect time of my life." Later she wrote, "I'm afraid of getting older. I'm afraid of getting married. Spare me from cooking 3 meals a day. Spare me from the relentless cage of routine and road. I want to be free. I think, to be omniscient. I think I would like to call myself the girl who wanted to be God." Poem Mirror consists of 2 9-line stanzas, which are both symmetrical and indicative of opposition. It is written in free verse, which means that it has no set pattern of a rhyme, of stressed and unstressed syllable. However, Plas mingles various chiming effects like sounds, repetitions, and rhymes to create rhythm and convey various themes and impressions. In the first stanza, the speaker is a mirror. The second stanza is like a reverse symmetrical reflection of the first one, mirrored structure. The poem is written from the perspective of a wall mirror, the narrator. The mirror is personified. In other words, it is endowed with human traits. The poem begins with a light-hearted observation on the unfailing honesty and accuracy of mirror's reflection. "I'm silver and exact. I have no preconceptions. Whatever I see, I swallow immediately, just as it is unmisted by love or dislike. I am not cruel, only truthful, the eye of a little god four-cornered." We see here that the mirror first describes itself as silver and exact. It is precise and reflects everything that appears in front of it as it is. It forms no judgments, instead merely swallowing what it sees and reflecting that image back without any alteration. The mirror is not cruel, only truthful. If a person dislikes his or her reflection in the mirror, he or she should not think that the mirror is cruel. It simply reflects the person's image as it is. It shows us our true appearance. The mirror compares itself to a four-cornered eye of a god, which sees equally in all the 4 directions and treats all things alike. Then the mirror continues. Most of the time, meditate on the opposite wall. It is pink with speckles. I have looked at it so long. I think it is a part of my heart, but it flickers. Faces and darkness separate us over and over. Here the mirror says that most of the time it keeps on looking at the opposite wall. It looks at the wall so intensely that can make out the tiny pink spots on it. It means that the mirror is so precise that it can find out the minutest defects in anything. It has been looking at the opposite wall for such a long time that the mirror describes it as a part of my heart. The image of the wall is interrupted only by people standing in front of the mirror and the darkness that comes with night. The second stanza acquires a more dramatic tone. It is like a reverse symmetrical reflection of the first one, mirrored structure. Now I am a leak. A woman bends over me, searching my reaches for what she really is. Then she turns to those liars, the candles or the moon. I see her back and reflect it faithfully. She rewards me with tears and an agitation of hands. Here the mirror compares itself to a leak, saying, I am a leak. This is an example of metaphor. A woman looks at herself in a leak, trying to discern who she really is. The mirror shows a woman's exact appearance with the inherent signs of aging. The mirror says that the moon and the candles, which praise a woman's beauty, are liars because they mask her true appearance. Thus, the mirror is truthful and shows her the reality which is bitter for her. In return for its truthfulness, the mirror gets woman's hatred, her tears, and an agitation of hands. Nevertheless, the mirror is very important for a woman. She cannot help visiting it over and over again every morning to ascertain her looks. This can be interpreted as a kind of mythological allusion to Narcissus. Narcissus was a hunter in Greek mythology. He was so handsome that all young women who saw him were attracted to him, but he paid no attention to any of them. A young nymph, Echo, fell in love with him. When Narcissus had learnt about her love, he turned away from her and said he would die before he gave her power over him. The young man despised all the beautiful women who loved him. One of them prayed to the gods and asked for revenge, saying, may he who cannot love others love only himself. The goddess of retribution and revenge, Nemesis, heard her prayers and decided to punish Narcissus for his behavior. She led him to a pool, and there, when the man bent over a spring to drink, he saw this reflection in the water and immediately fell in love with it. He thought to himself, now I understand how all those who loved me feel, for I am possessed of a love of myself. He could not take his eyes off his image in the water and died as a result of this infatuation. His body disappeared, and where he had been appeared a beautiful flower, which was named after him, Narcissus. Plas had purposefully used the water imagery in the final lines of her poem, since it provides the same reflected qualities as the mirror, but also suggests depth, coldness, the unknown, and the threat of death by drowning. I'm important to her. She comes and goes. Each morning, it is her face that replaces the darkness. In me, she has drowned a young girl, and in me, an old woman rises towards her day after day like a terrible fish. The mirror has been the transformation in the woman's appearance over the years. With each passing day, she becomes older and the signs of aging emerge on her face. Now the face of a young and pretty girl does not exist, but the mirror still remembers it. Years later, the woman has drowned a young girl in the mirror and now sees in her reflection an elderly woman who is growing older day by day. This old woman rises toward her out of the mirror like a terrible fish. This fish can symbolize the old woman trying to hold firmly her lost youth, as it does fish opening its mouth at the surface of the water due to lack of oxygen. In other words, just as the woman's youth seems to fade away into the mirror, so does the old age get clearer and closer, rising toward her from the mirror's surface. The mirror compares the woman's aged face to that of a terrible fish, as both are ugly and no one wants to look at them. As Friedman states, Ploss uses mirror as a symbol of female passivity, subjection, and Ploss' own conflicted self-identity caused by social pressures to reconcile the competing obligations of artistic and domestic life. The mirror
Yeah, I think we need to watch the second presentation as well. Now, in this particular case, the question, if you have any question, is not relevant. Actually, let's watch another presentation, and through this online platform, if you are interested, you can see the authors and you can get connected with them. Right. So we will have one more presentation, and then we will join room number 1 for the closing ceremony.
Well, Nicholas, excuse me, please.
Yes, Yehuda, please.
Okay, I would like to thank my colleague for presenting such a wonderful piece of work. Though it's not my cup of tea, I mean literature or poetry, but still I have started working on a paper years back, but I didn't finish that paper yet. It tackles, the paper tackles the symbols of colors in Sylvia Plath's poetry and Nazig al-Mala'ika's poetry. An Iraqi renowned poet, actually. Actually, our colleague indicated something about that part in the self of Sylvia Plath. I mean, confession. It's there in most of her poetry, and I noticed that remembering some parts of that paper, colors actually are very distinguished element in her work and in Al-Mala'ika's work. You know that both are females. I mean, female poets. They suffered a lot as women. They have different stages in their life. I did like to make that comparison between East and West conceptualization of the color or the color terms in two renowned poets. I may make use of or I may consult our colleague just presented her paper now and may quote some parts of her work. So I would like to thank her again for presenting this piece of work. Thank you, Nicholas.
Thank you. Thank you, Uda, for this observation. She's our invited lecturer, and if you are interested, I can help you to get connected, definitely. And thank you for your comparison. And yeah, Georgia also is a kind of like the threshold of Eastern and Western culture. So yeah, it's also really very much interesting for us from this cultural perspective. Thank you for this observation.
Thank you.
So, dear colleagues, please bear with me. Yeah, I think we have some 10 minutes to listen to this, to watch this presentation, and then we can join the closing ceremony. Sidika, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Could you please announce the presenter, if you don't mind?
Is it the concept of that in Jack London's Love of Life? Is it
Yeah.
true?
Yes.
The presenter is Manana Aslanishvili.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and could you please confirm if you hear this sound?
Actually, in the program, one more presentation also seems, but
Unfortunately, the presenter did not send, so
okay.
I cannot.
To meet you again and happy to take part in your conference. My name is Manana Aslanishvili. I'm philology doctor from Georgian Technical University. The topic of my presentation is the concept of death in Jack London's story, Law of Life. Jack London was born in 1876 in San Francisco. Despite his lack of formal education, he also became a voracious reader, especially of fiction. In 1896, he joined the gold rush to the Klondike, where he found no gold, but gathered ample material for the brutal, vigorous life, the portrait in The Call of the Wild, The White Fang, and The Law of Life. In these stories, Jack London drew powerful pictures of man's battle with nature. He showed the world of the long Arctic night in which men fought with men, with hunger, cold, and death in order to survive. He wrote about faithful, strong, and courageous people who could overcome all hardships and win in the battle of life. Jack London's The Law of Life is a very short story that deals with the approach of death to old Koskoosh, an Indian, a former Eskimo chief who has been an able warrior and who is now abandoned in the snow by his tribe to meet his final fate. While he is sitting there, he dreams of the old days and especially about experience with a grand old moose, which he saw struggle with wolves until it finally died. During these meditations, the old Indian gets surrounded by wolves himself, to which he has to surrender in the end in order to obey the law of life. The first striking aspect when reading this very short story is that all the events are conveyed through the protagonist's point of view, particularly through the sense of listening. Jack London thematizes the last hours of an old man who cannot keep up with the pace of his life anymore and who is abandoned by those who are still young and strong. This seems very brutal and heartless. Those people, being members of his own family and tribe, are described careless. His eyesight is poor, but his hearing is quite good. He sits alone, weak and tired, waiting for his impending death. In the depths of his heart, as an immortal, he was afraid of death. Old Koskoosh accepts and respects death as he did life. Death is in the shadows beyond the fire. Old Koskoosh was born close to the earth and knows that he will again be rejoined with the earth when he dies. He uses his wisdom to comfort himself as he is left alone in the cold feeding a fire. He knows that he will once die and once the food runs out. Old Koskoosh thinks about his granddaughter with frustration. Sitkim Tuha ignores your grandfather. His grandchild is too busy to waste a thought upon your broken grandfather. Old Koskoosh feels a momentary panic as he was left alone, abandoned by his family. He imagines what his death will be like. He shows fear as he strains his ears to confirm the howl of the approaching wolves. If Sitkim Tuha had only remembered your grandfather and gathered a larger armful of wood, his hours would have been longer. From these sentences, the reader could understand that the old man is about to die because his family wants it like that. But this isn't the case. They are only doing what they consider to be natural. He would sit on the snow and wait for his death, for he was old and blind and a burden for his people and family. As he sits by the fire alone, he is reminded of all the animals that died. He acknowledges that his existence is no more or less important than all living beings. He finds peace in the understanding that while he is dying alone, he is not alone in his dying. Each living being eventually dies. Old Koshku was left on the mercy of fate. He had to die. It was inevitable. It was the law of life. To perpetuate was the task of life. Its law was death. There were plenty who were obedient, and it was only the obedience in the matter, not the obedient, which lived and lived always. This means that death is inevitable for the individual, but living should be inevitable for the species and the race. No matter how well one is equipped for life, nature takes everything away until the end approaches. It does not matter if one is a maiden full-breasted and young and strong, or headman of a tribesman and a mighty hunter. One has to obey nature with its law of life. Being very close to death makes the old man panicky for the moment. He is not ready to cope with the ending, for he clings to every little item which still connects him with life. In the beginning of the story, he says he is as a last year's leaf clinging lightly to the stem. But this is not true, because he clings to it with all the strength which nature has left him. He controls the fire, taking care that it will not go out, for he knows that cold is the beginning of the ending. He realizes that the rest of life is now represented by a handful of sticks. His time diminishes each time he adds sticks to the fire. At last, the measure of his life was a handful of faggots. One by one, they would go to feed the fire, and just step by step, death would creep upon him. The familiar howl of wolves interrupts old Koshku's thoughts and immediately takes him back to the memory of the old bull moose, blooded and dying. He then feels a cold muzzle against his cheek, and which awakens him from the memory. Old Koshkush grabs a burning stick and waves it desperately at the wolf. The wolf howls. He continues to use the sticks to stave off the circling wolves. Old Koshku asks himself why he should cling to life. He drops the blazing stick into the snow, and it extinguishes. When the last stick had surrendered up the heat, the frost would begin to gather strength. His head would fall forward upon his knees, and he would rest. It was easy. All men must die, and he did not complain. It was the way of life. He had been born to the earth. Close to the earth had he lived, and the law was now new for him. The ending is the same for all people. Sooner or later, he had to die. That was the law of life. In conclusion, it's necessary to mention that the aim of the study was to analyze the concept of death in Jack London's story, The Law of Life. In the story, Jack London wrote about hard life of people and their attitude to each other. He drew powerful pictures of men in battle with nature, hunger, cold, and death. He wrote about strong and courageous people like old Koshkush, who could overcome all difficulties, even looking forward to death. Old Koshkush accepts and respects death as he did life. Left on the mercy of life, old and blind, he finds peace in the understanding that while he is dying alone, he is not alone in his dying. Each living being eventually dies. He knew that death was inevitable, that sooner or later he had to die. That was the law of life. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. The last pictures were not quite pleasant, but anyway, when we move to the closing session, we will have more positive emotions. Dear colleagues, any questions, any comments? Right. Could I please kindly ask you to join room number 1? There, I think the last participant is presenting, and then we will have a closing session. Let me use this chance to thank all of you, my dear colleagues from different countries. In spite of these time differences, all of you managed to participate in this conference and present wonderful observations. So now, please, let's go to room number 1.
Couple of words, Mr. Nicholas. I would like to thank every participant for very interesting papers, presentations, and I would be very happy if I have a chance to participate in such interesting conferences in future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for kind words. Okay, dear colleagues, let's go to room number 1. Thank you.